You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Wednesday, the 21st of November. UK grants highest number of EU citizenships. Qatada intends to sue for £10 million, say his family. Malaysian criminal gets her deportation order overturned. Wednesday comment from the Reverend West. March against radical Islam ignored by French authorities. From wedding dress to suicide vest. Was the US presidential election the most corrupt yet? Thought for the day, foreign aid or a way of keeping us poor? And finally, Santa Jaws. UK news. In terms of numbers, the UK took on the most citizens with 195,000, followed by France 143,000, Spain 124,000 and Germany 105,000, altogether accounting for 70% of the total. Over 810,000 people were given EU citizenship in 2010, with Moroccans forming the largest group coming to the EU, followed by Turks, Ecuadorians and Indians. With 67,000 Moroccans granted nationality, and they were the top foreign groups in Belgium, France, Italy and the Netherlands. Turks, 49,900 in total, tend to go to Germany, where they are the top group receiving citizenship. Ecuadorians go to Spain and Indians come to the UK. Nigerians were the biggest group to receive citizenship in Ireland, while Portuguese topped the list in Luxembourg, Australians in Malta, Iraqis in Sweden and Ukrainians in both the Czech Republic and Poland. A World at 8 reporter commented, "Remember, these are the official stats for official status. No one really exactly knows how many illegals join them in these countries." Qatada plans to sue the British government for £10 million for unlawful detention. The hate preacher has said he wants compensation for his extended mistreatment after a judge released him from jail last week and blocked his deportation to Jordan to face terror charges. Qatada was awarded a far smaller payout from the European Court of Human Rights 3 years ago after judges ruled he had been unfairly detained in Belmarsh High Security Jail without trial. But the cleric's family said that his hopes of a much larger compensation win have been boosted after the Special Immigration Court ruled last Monday that there was a real risk that evidence obtained through torture might be used against him if he was sent home to Jordan to face trial. The cleric, once described by a judge as Osama bin Laden's ambassador in Europe, has been bailed to his family home in London after spending much of the past 7 years behind bars. Qatada lives in North London with his wife and 5 children on state handouts said to total £1,000 a month. A World at 8 reporter has stated, "A stupid lily-livered UK judge will probably give him £10 million. A Malay criminal who employed 20 illegal immigrants in 2 restaurants and was caught laundering money and conspiring to sell fake goods has had her deportation order overturned by the Immigration and Asylum Chamber, an organisation that 99.9% of British people never knew was active in their own country. The reason why convicted 34-year-old Ivy Young was not deported by this Immigration and Asylum Chamber was because she would be stigmatised as a criminal back home in Malaysia, which is now mainly a Muslim country where corruption has gone underground. Ivy Young served 4 years for her crimes and is now free to do as she pleases. A World at 8 writer commented, "It seems that now there are people who have some interest in keeping foreign criminals in this country. Why? Do they have voting rights?" Britain's biggest banking fraudster is jailed, and he isn't even a Brit. Kweki Adoboli stood trial and was jailed this week for the biggest banking fraud in UK history. Wiping out everything in his grasp, the former UBS trader created losses of around $2.4 billion without any authorisation. He traded the loss with the Swiss bank and has now received a 7-year jail sentence. He is the son of a senior United Nations official and grew up in Israel, Syria and Iraq. I now hand you over to the Reverend West for his talk on Wednesday.
My name is the Reverend Robert West, and I am an ordained minister of the gospel of over 30 years standing, ordained to the ministry by the Vice President of the Apostolic Church in Wales in 1979, and working part-time now as a supply teacher and visiting lecturer in the Peterborough, Stamford and Lincolnshire areas. I'm also the padre or chaplain to the British Veterans Group, which caters for ex-service British men and women, and I'm also a local minister and the moderator of the nationwide Christian Council of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, which has been set up to combat Islam and political correctness. It is a wonderful privilege to preach and to teach, to take wedding services and funerals and baptisms, and to reach out to our young as well as to our old, and to everyone in between. I have had the great privilege of supporting Mrs. Karen Downs in her struggle to get justice for her daughter Charlene, who was the victim of Mohammedan sex grooming and worse. With all the scandals going on in our public life, there seem to be so many issues to be addressed. The United Kingdom establishment has been rocked by one disgrace after another. People must be looking to some source of strength and hope, and up until now they have not found it, not even in the prospective appointment of a new Archbishop of Canterbury. Christian men and women of religious faith seem to have become the victim of a relentless and orchestrated campaign of hate and persecution, emanating from homosexual rights activists who want to impose their depravities on the rest of society as if they were normal and acceptable. Who would have imagined this 30 years ago, when I was first ordained as a humble presbyter in my chapel by the sea in Wales? Life soon passes, and society has soon deteriorated. One thing that we can all take comfort in, however, is the Coalition for Marriage's campaign to keep matrimony holy and to resist the wiles of the devil. For it is that slippery fiend who is behind the present coalition government's attempts to redefine wedlock so as to include that which God abhors, as indeed that slippery fiend is behind so much that is going wrong with our public and national life. To redefine wedlock to include unnatural practices and partnerships will in reality destroy it. Fewer people will want to get wedded in that sort of way, if that is what it implies. Wedlock is supposed to be holy and not to include iniquity. We rejoice that the Christian who was demoted for in his Facebook remarks saying that sodomy was an equality too far has won his legal case. Positive action does bring positive results. Congratulations, therefore, to Mr. Adam Smith and to his team at the Christian Institute who backed his cause. Rowan Atkinson of Mr. Bean fame has urged MPs to restore freedom of speech by taking away from Section 5 of the Public Order Act the words insulting, which have been used to clam up freedom of speech, especially in the criticism of the followers of the faith of Mohammed. The Wilkinsons are to appeal the decision made against them, fining them to the tune of £3,000 for refusing a sodomite pair the use of a double bed in their own bed and breakfast home. Good for them. Such disgusting and dangerous behaviour, a very intrusive form of assault, should not be imposed on anyone in modern Britain. That was the kind of thing that was done by the Greeks and the Romans in the ancient world. It is best left there. If homosexuals want to behave like that, they should do it in the dark and on their own premises. I have to ask how Conservatives can put up with a Prime Minister who can support that sort of thing, and who wishes to extend and promote it in the classroom to our young. That is hardly caring for the young, Mr. Cameron. And what has passed between the two of you to make you think that that sort of thing is normal? The mind boggles. There is clearly much for us to pray about and to work for. I hope that the Christians in the British National Party will continue to do this in a way that is befitting and honouring to their Lord.
Thank you, Reverend West. European news. A patriotic march for French values and culture and against radical Islam was virtually blacked out by France's politically correct media. Over the weekend, protesters chanted against Islamic fascism and about the French victory over Arab invaders in 732 AD. It was the first march of its kind in France. A broad coalition of groups from across France came together because they feel they're losing their country to radical Islam, Sharia law and a politically correct establishment that encourages the spread of Islam. Sharia law is slowly being enforced in our country, and we want to march here to protest that because our government is doing nothing, one French demonstrator said. The French people, they want to defend their culture, their history. They are called fascists, one woman said. I don't think it's only a problem of France, it's a problem of Europe. It's also a problem for the USA, another protester said. There was no visible counter-demonstration, but an egg did manage to hit a CBN News reporter who was standing near the protesters. France has more Muslims than any other European nation. Some believe there could be as many as 15 million Muslims in France, although the official figure is of course much lower. The leftist French media ignored the demonstration, seeing it as racist. But it's clear the movement to resist radical Islam is growing in France. World news. A convert to Islam kissed her daughter goodbye and blew herself up at a cleric's home. Brought up as an Orthodox Christian by her mother, Aminat Kurbanova looked a picture of happiness at her wedding 9 years ago, marrying the man with whom she had fallen in love at drama school. But she converted to Islam in 2007 and 3 months ago walked into the house of a Muslim cleric in Dagestan, Russia, wearing a 3-pound bomb and blew herself up, killing 8 people. At least 12 religious leaders have been killed over the last 2 years in Dagestan, allegedly by militants angry that they are too friendly with the authorities. Atsayev could have been targeted because he spoke against violent Islam. The election of 2012 is proving to be the most corrupt election ever in the United States. Stories are coming in from all over the nation where the electronic machines check off Obama when Romney's name was chosen. In 59 Philadelphia voting divisions, Romney did not get one single vote. Obama got them all. Most dictators can't get results like that. In Maine, they're looking into allegations of voter fraud in several counties where blacks went into polling places to vote, but there are no blacks that live in the community. The worst that our reporter has seen were the results in the pivotal swing state of Florida. Statewide had an average voter turnout of an unbelievable 141%. Every county in Florida had a minimum of 114% voter turnout. The nation's average voter turnout is around 70% at best. One county in Florida had a turnout of 182.35%. How can any reasonable person not have serious questions about these numbers? Still stateside, the US President Barack Obama has spoken openly to various Asian countries over the disputing of certain islands in the China Sea and other regions. He warned Asia that disputing over territories could lead to the breaking up of commercial trade between the great nations of Asia and stem the flow of business. Over the last few months, the World at 8 covered the ongoing problem of China and Japan over 3 islands which were situated along one of the many busy shipping lanes in the China Sea. Taiwan has also staked a claim to the islands, but the dispute between all 3 countries still exists. Thought for the day. Foreign aid, or things do not look good. The Daily Mail plays a double game. They give you all the bad news on immigration, foreign aid and the troubles that beset our country, but if anyone provides a solution, they are immediately relegated to the back burner or vilified. I have just been reading about the foreign aid we give to Nigeria, of all places. My second husband, now deceased, had to spend a lot of time in Nigeria in the late 70s, and he described it thus: "If God wanted to give the world an enema, he would put the end in Nigeria." Even in those days it was a hotbed of filth, corruption and AIDS. Although not totally Muslim, which I believe it soon will be, which of course just adds to the corruption of the country. He even told a tale that a hotel he was staying at was on the waterfront, such as it is, and they had chicken wire separating the sparse grounds from the waterfront. It was on this wire that the first morning he woke up to see masses of figures hanging off the wire, and it was only on closer inspection that he and everyone else could see that they were people defecating into the water whilst hanging off the fence. Now put this with the picture of poor little starving babies, and I bet it is the dirty bastards hanging on that fence who will take our foreign aid, not the poor innocents. The UK gives 230 million in aid to further the education system in that blighted land. Britain has already given £102 million in education to 10 of Nigeria's 36 states in the last 7 years, and is due to spend another £126 million by 2019. However, the reports coming out of this country on the absence of teachers and the growing danger of funding radical Islamic schools from which some non-Muslim pupils boycott in protest. Add to this the enormous amount of aid we push into Africa, which does no good but feed the soldiers and the Muslim clerics, whilst they burn down Christian churches who get no funds at all from us. What planet is this country and its successive governments on? This is not just a coalition problem, it is a two-party problem, Conservative and Labour, as the Lib Dems have never really contributed anything. We push money at black dictators and torturers whilst ignoring the plight of the tortured. We push money at people whilst ignoring the awful things they do to each other and the animal kingdom in those countries. China is sitting on the sidelines like a large fat yellow Buddha, waiting, just waiting, while the natives keep killing each other off. Soon that land will be empty, most Africans who are not already in Europe will come, and the rest will be killed by the Muslims or AIDS, whichever comes first. And who will move in? Not the poor old ex-colonialists who have forked out an enormous fortune over the years for this country, but the Chinese. Mind you, if that happens, it'll give the Muslims something to fight for that might actually mean something. Now, I'm not a hard person. I do not like to see babies starving, who does? But it has reached my ears that many of these awful films and pictures are posed. Now how can a sane person pose a starving baby and film it dying without giving it some food or medical help? Probably the same liberal lovies who can see baby monkeys being crated up to die in the hold of an aeroplane and do nothing. Now this country must stop foreign aid. Why? Because with the Euro crisis we are going to get poorer, and by this I mean the indigenous people of this land. It is our money, past and present, that is going to people who do not deserve it. You do not deserve large amounts of money just because you are black and live in Africa. In fact, you do not need a benefits package just because you have stepped off a lorry and you are black Nigerian and over here. This means that you, as a black African, are getting paid twice for doing bugger all, just travelling from one country to another, all being paid for by the people you chucked out of your country some years ago. Does our guilt complex go far enough? Obviously not. We also finance many organisations that promote black youth in this country. Why? When we do nothing to promote our own white youths. Our UK lottery money goes to funding stupid and nefarious organisations and groups for multi-ethnic claptrap, whilst our hospitals are groaning under the weight of coloured patients or the many bad coloured medical staff. Save the Children is another fiasco, with most of the money going abroad, not on our deprived children. Meanwhile in Buckinghamshire, the young single mother, mentioned on a previous report, has been turned down for a house because the private owners in India do not want social services clients. And yet no doubt they will enthuse if an Asian family on benefits with umpteen kids move in. So there is a system here, and it is not run for us Brits. Whilst the establishment continue to push money out of this country, pay immigrants vast amounts of money in benefits, cut down on English pensions and means test the English sick and deprived, whilst paying out additional vast amounts of money for the idiot children of Muslim cousin marriages, our future does not look good. Whilst we continue to run charities for all and sundry and none for our own, things do not look good. Whilst we allowed our councils to pay off huge Sharia mortgages for Muslims and yet evict our needy and out of work, things do not look good. While it seems that the entire reason for the existence of England is to pay, support and excuse the various crimes and general behaviour of illegals and often legal immigrants whilst sending our own damaged people around the bend, things do not look good. Whilst we give legal aid, interpreters and help at the drop of a hat to newcomers and yet our own are ignored, things do not look good. This country and its general public need to wake up. Life is not lived through or round the television or an iPod or whatever. We cannot continue to think we are all celebs or that we deserve it, because clearly our successive governments do not think this at all. It is another people, strangers in this land or living many thousands of miles away, who deserve our money, isn't it? We all need to stop listening to the propaganda spread throughout this land, through the media, that everyone else on this planet is deserving of all help and support, and yet us, the white race, are deserving of nothing, even in our own land. Stop all immigration. Stop all foreign aid. Stop all benefits for existing newcomers. If they do not work, they do not earn points. Stop free healthcare for existing newcomers. If they've not worked in this country, they should not benefit from the work of others. Things will look better when the sand shifts the other way. I guarantee it. It is a much better view for the United Kingdom and us. And finally, Santa draws a new way to drop off the presents. Steve Chessel, a soldier, volunteered to abseil in through the ceiling of the Broad Street Mall in Reading to surprise the public, but things went disastrously wrong. Poor Santa got so caught up in the festive spirit he ended up dangling from the ceiling by his fake beard, so instead of floating serenely down from the skies to deliver his presents, Santa ended up hanging 15 feet above the ground by his forced facial hair for more than half an hour. 2 Coronation Street celebs were there to watch the festivities, but Michelle Keegan added, "Some people were absolutely mortified, while others thought it was the funniest thing ever." This presenter says, "I'm not so sure this is hilarious as it seems. First, he is a soldier and was trying to do something for the great British public, which is usually a thankless task. And secondly, why was he left hanging so long while all around were in hysterics? No, this is a chapter that should be tucked away under bad manners and even worse management. Poor chap, it's safer in Afghanistan. At least they're not your own people stabbing you in the back." This is a milestone and you and our listeners have contributed. We have reached the 100,000 mark for listeners, which is a huge number for Voices Only News and contributions. Our foreign listeners are included, especially in Saudi and Pakistan. We have official reporters and several regular articles on the world at 8, and you can all give yourselves a pat on the back. You have been listening to the World at 8. I am Lynn Mozart and I wish you all a very good night. £1. A Malay criminal who employed 20 illegal immigrants in 2 restaurants and was caught laundering money and conspiring to sell fake goods has had her deportation order overturned by the Immigration and Asylum Chamber, an organisation that 99.9% of British people never knew was active in their own country. The reason why convicted 34-year-old IV Young was not deported by this Immigration and Asylum Chamber was because she would be stigmatised as a criminal back home in Malaysia, which is now mainly a Muslim country where corruption has gone underground. AV Young served 4 years for her crimes and is now free to do as she pleases. A World at 8 writer commented, "It seems that now there are people who have some interest in keeping foreign criminals in this country. Why? Do they have voting rights?"
You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the number 1 in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Wednesday, the 21st of November. UK grants highest number of EU citizenships. Qatada intends to sue for £10 million, say his family. Malaysian criminal gets her deportation order overturned. Wednesday comment from the Reverend West. March against radical Islam ignored by French authorities. From wedding dress to suicide vest. Was the US presidential election the most corrupt yet? Thought for the day: foreign aid or a way of keeping us poor? And finally, Santa Jaws. UK news. In terms of numbers, the UK took on the most citizens with 195,000, followed by France 143,000, Spain 124,000 and Germany 105,000, altogether accounting for 70% of the total. Over 810,000 people were given EU citizenship in 2010, with Moroccans forming the largest group coming to the EU, followed by Turks, Ecuadorians and Indians. With 67,000 Moroccans granted nationality, and they were the top foreign groups in Belgium, France, Italy and the Netherlands. Turks, 49,900 in total, tend to go to Germany, where they are the top group receiving citizenship. Ecuadorians go to Spain and Indians come to the UK. Nigerians were the biggest group to receive citizenship in Ireland, while Portuguese topped the list in Luxembourg, Australians in Malta, Iraqis in Sweden and Ukrainians in both the Czech Republic and Poland. A World Date reporter commented, "Remember, these are the official stats for official status. No one really exactly knows how many illegals join them in these countries." Qatada plans to sue the British government for £10 million for unlawful detention. The hate preacher has said he wants compensation for his extended mistreatment after a judge released him from jail last week and blocked his deportation to Jordan to face terror charges. Qatada was awarded a far smaller payout from the European Court of Human Rights 3 years ago after judges ruled he had been unfairly detained in Belmarsh High Security Jail without trial. But the cleric's family said that his hopes of a much larger compensation win had been boosted after the Special Immigration Court ruled last Monday that there was a real risk that evidence obtained through torture might be used against him if he was sent home to Jordan to face trial. The cleric, once described by a judge as Osama bin Laden's ambassador in Europe, has been bailed to his family home in London after spending much of the past 7 years behind bars. Qatada lives in North London with his wife and 5 children on state handouts said to total £1,000 a month. A World Date reporter has stated, "A stupid lily-livered UK judge will probably give him £10 million.